All right, now we're on. Let's try this again. Hey, welcome. This is Chris Roe with Encounter Ministries, and we're back with our second Candid conversation, Hope in the Middle of Crisis. I've got Monty McCart in Florida and Jesse Crowe somewhere up near Sipsey, Alabama. So we'll be sharing with you. Jesse is our first two-time guest. We didn't get enough from him yesterday, and he plays a vital role in this story. Jesse's a minister with me in a lot of our ministry endeavors, prison, campus house, as well as ministry with the church at Southside. And Monty owns his own insurance business, but by trade anyway, but by heart is a minister. We've met a few years ago at a Wild at Heart boot camp. So I just want to start out thanking you guys for being here. Monty, Jesse, and I have been good friends over the last 4 years. 4 years? Was it 4 years ago that we met, Monty?
Pretty close. I think it'll be 4 years this fall.
Okay. So we're going to be talking about hope in the middle of crisis. And I want to just go over a few assumptions. This is not just about the coronavirus or COVID-19, but I want to go over a few assumptions that we're starting with that we kind of agree upon, and then I want to hear a little bit from these guys, especially about our relationship. One assumption is that there's a larger story being told in all of this, and God wasn't caught by surprise. That there's more to this than just a virus and just panic and just people hoarding toilet paper. Two, I don't believe that God caused this. We're assuming that he didn't cause this and that he is not punishing us. Also, fierce love and action are always a necessity in the kingdom. Our hope is in God. It's in the coming kingdom, but also the kingdom that's already being established. And in this larger story, that it's a war. We are at war with the evil one who wishes to kill, steal, and destroy. From John chapter 10. So also from our conversation yesterday, and Monty brought up off camera, we have authority. We have things that have been entrusted to us, and we get to have influence and authority over those things. So I'd like to start, Monty, Jesse, with just a little background, whoever wants to talk about how we became friends and also the value of relationships and story.
Well, it was about 3.5 years ago. I was in I guess you could call it I don't want to call it a dark place, because it was God rescuing me, the Father coming to get me and taking me into a larger story. My younger son, Rylan, basically told me to go to a Wild at Heart boot camp. And so I went and got there late and walked into the cafeteria area where about 500 men were sitting, looked around and saw an empty spot next to Jesse and Chris. And my first response was, I like the way these guys look. I think they're my kind of guys, and sat down by them. And I think Jesse said, well, how did you get here? And I briefly told him my story, and they weren't shocked or anything. They just said, yeah, man, we get it. And so it's like, oh, okay. And later in that same boot camp, ironically, we were in the same cabin, which was not, it was all pre-planned by the Father. Walked in late one night, and Father had been speaking words about me to Jesse, and Jesse just basically, with love, laid me open and spoke words of life and love and validation that I couldn't hear, because I didn't really think God spoke that way. Wanted to, but and he hasn't stopped. These guys are in Alabama, and I'm all the way in Florida, but that doesn't even matter. It's awesome. So that's the quick version.
Jesse, you want to speak to, because Monty wasn't there for the few minutes or the afternoon before. So even with what you offered him, there was a little background to that. So you want to start with like when we got to boot camp, what God did for you, and then how that led you to love on Monty?
Yeah. So when when I got there, Keith and I, it's another friend that was at this, was at the boot camp with us, got to ride in with a really dear friend of all of ours, a guy named Barry, who's kind of a father to most of us, I would say, that kind of hang out. I don't think Monty's gotten to meet Barry yet, but so when I got there, I had just finished a book called The Story of With. It's just about, it's written for people who write music or write stories and stuff, and it's based on the idea of creating with God, walking with God and creating some sort of art or whatever. And it was written by a guy named Alan Arnold, and I was super stoked about this book. Like, it was really resonating with me as a songwriter and everything, and really God was sort of drawing me closer as far as the process of songwriting with that book. And so I get there, and like, we were there probably, I don't know how long we were there, probably like an hour maybe, I don't know. And me, Barry, Chris, Keith standing there, and I hear this familiar voice. And I'd heard what Alan Arnold sounded like from the podcast, because he had done some podcasts to promote the book, but I had never really heard him talk before other than that podcast. But I remember really digging that podcast because I was reading the book at the time, and I heard that familiar voice. Like, man, he sounds really familiar. And then I think Chris, you introduced us, said, Alan, this is Jesse. He just, I don't know if you even said anything about the book. He said, this is my friend Jesse Crowe. And
No,
he
I
said,
didn't. I didn't say anything about the book at all.
Yeah, and he said, I'm Alan. And I went, and both Chris and Keith make fun of this because I started crying like I always do. And I'm like, oh man, like, started like getting choked up. And I said, you wrote the book, Story With, I just finished it. It was so impactful to me. And I would like to say that was the coolest moment of that moment, meeting Alan, a writer that I really admire. But the coolest moment of that interaction was Barry standing against the wall with this big stupid grin on his face, and he said, Jesse, don't you see how important you are to God for him to orchestrate this moment for you? And I mean, just floored by that. Just like, I mean, already starting to walk in the fact that I'm adored by the Father, and I'm pursued by him, and that he actually likes me, not just loves me. And I'm like, and it just, man, it was just a breeze across the face of my heart, man. Just so refreshing to know that God was walking in that with me. And so, fast forward, that afternoon at dinner, I meet Monty. Immediately, he and I and Chris and Keith had this connection, and we're talking and stuff. And I could tell, dude, Monty, I could look in your face and tell, like, there was something about you that was just down. I don't know, just remembering that moment, just thinking, man, it's just, my heart just kind of broke for you. I didn't even know you. I didn't know anything about your story. And my heart just broke, and later on, throughout the weekend, or I think it was the next day or the next night or something, I told Chris, I was like, man, where's Monty? Where's that dude Monty that we met yesterday or this morning or whatever? And I said, man, I just feel, I don't know, Chris, if you remember this, we're standing there by the pool table, and I said, I really feel like we need to talk to that dude, man. I feel like God's just like drawing us closer to him, and Chris was like, well, let's find him. Sure enough, I think you were in the game room, and we talked to you a little bit. And then, and of course, later that night, we figured out we were staying in the same house, and we're down in the little living room of our little, of the quarters or where we're staying. And, man, you kind of gushed and started telling us your story and telling us some of the stuff you'd been through, that a lot of dudes have been through, that we've seen. And that's why it was no surprise to us, man. We've many of us have been there ourselves, or we walked with people that have been there through ourselves. And we just through doing ministry, as you know now, Monty, with walking with Live Free, it's like, man, there's so many dudes out there that are struggling, that are frustrated, that are heartbroken, that are walking in pain. And so, we're sitting in that little living room area, and God's like tapped on the shoulders, like, okay, now it's your turn. You get to tell Monty that. And, And so I said, man, Monty, I said, I don't know why I feel like I need to say this to you, but I was like, man, do you know how important you are to God? And I just remember us both like broke down crying. And, man, it was just a beautiful moment. Like so many moments that we've all experienced in ministry where, the heart of God is revealed, and it's always beautiful. It's like, I love the way Monty put that, like God just laid me open with those words of love, man. It's just, you know, when the heart of God is revealed, it's never condemnation. It's never guilt, because guilt and condemnation and self-contempt brings you further away from God. But when the heart of God is revealed, there is conviction, but there's always this refreshing love that draws us closer in, always. And I think that's what we experienced on that weekend.
Yeah, it's like, I often think about, then the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, just out of John somewhere. And that's what happened to me through you. It was just, it became life off of a page. Words went from being up here into my heart, and there was a healing that took place there. I mean, there really isn't words to describe it, but and the fact that it came from a songwriter's heart made it even more precious. So, and an excellent songwriter and singer and musician, incredible one. I mean, yeah, man. Words can't describe it. It really can't.
So
it hadn't stopped. It has not stopped. Just this epic adventure the Father's put us on. Maybe He's always been on, just didn't see it. And it's just amazing, amazing.
Amen.
So let's hear from you guys then, just kind of in summary of that section at least. What's been the value of relationship? Because what I'm hearing from you is relationship is vital in the middle of crisis and difficulty to provide hope. And two, what I'm hearing is relationship can't really happen without somebody first being vulnerable, feeling safe, and being vulnerable and sharing their story.
I would say that, so with what, I mean, here's a man that I've never met before, I felt safe with, but had the guts to step out of the boat and be vulnerable and just put it out there. Did not react with fear, but with boldness and courage, and spoke. And if you take that into what's happening now with the things that are going on, you know, you can react in fear, or you can react with courage and with the authority that we've been given. And when I look at Jesse and you guys, I see warriors, men that are not fearful, that aren't self-medicating and looking for relief through fill in the blank, but is approaching this, even before this virus thing, with restoration and healing, and stepping up and, you know, using the armor that we've been entrusted with.
So, like, I think part of the reason people get so hopeless is, especially when there's crisis, the wind isn't bothering y'all, is the wind's kind of blowing here? Is it cool?
No, we can hear it a little bit, but you're good.
Okay. So I think part of the reason that people become so hopeless in this kind of crisis, or in any crisis, is there is a lot of disconnection with people. But when you have people that are genuinely trying to walk with Jesus and are genuinely trying to pursue the, you know, or be pursued by the heart of the Father, there's hope in that, because I mean you're connected to someone else, you're walking with someone else. there's hope, because you got dudes that are actually listening. They're actually responding to what God's telling them to do, rather than responding to what fear is telling them to do, or what they think. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, or not a lot of people, but I've heard a handful of people make comments about, maybe this is God's wake-up call to the world. And I love the assumption that we're holding to here, is that we're not going to assume that this is what God calls this catastrophe to happen just so he could wake his people up. We're not going to assume that, but we are going to assume that God desperately loves us, that he cares for us, that he is pursuing us, and that his pursuit for us is always love. It's always, he pursues us in love, and he risks for us in love, and we risk for each other in love and relationship. And man, I tell you, like, if we would have walked through this kind of deal, 10 years ago, for me, I didn't have as many brothers around me that walked this way, that were connected to the heart of the Father, other than, one or two. And man, I tell you, like, being able to walk through a crisis like this with guys who are connected both to each other and also to God, and are actually listening, actively trying to listen to God in a moment of crisis. That's what's so important, rather than making the wrong assumptions. Like we've drawn these assumptions that we stated at the beginning of this video, because that's where God is. That's where we've seen him. That's how we've seen him. Those assumptions are based on characteristics that we've seen in our own lives and in the lives of each other. And man, you can't hold to those kind of assumptions outside and isolated to yourself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. There's no long rangers in this deal.
So, guys, what do you think? What do you think right now is that God is offering you, and what God is offering to men, women, couples, just like ourselves, who, look, nobody is facing this without some level of worry, trepidation, fear. What do you think the offer of God is right now in the midst of this crisis, and to you specifically and to us in general?
He's been telling me even before this that he's trustworthy, that, I'm big enough, that I can handle all of this. Just trust me with this. I care about the little day-to-day things that you go through, and things on a worldview. I can handle all of this. Just, there's a bigger story, and there's a golden thread that's threaded through this whole thing. Stop looking at the weeds that are growing all around you. I'll take care of those, and push forward. This is an epic story,
That's good. What about you, Jess?
I'm kind of in the same boat, I think. And I said it in the video we did the other day. One thing that God is telling me through this is he's not indifferent. That's one agreement. In the ransom heart culture, we walk in, we talk about agreements, and basically vows that we make, like, someone who's maybe parents called them stupid when they were a kid, and you grew up with this agreement that you've made that you're a dumb person. And so we talk about breaking those agreements, that you're not dumb, that you're not stupid, that kind of example. So for me, it's like, one of the agreements that I've made is like, as long as I'm walking with Jesus and I'm doing his will, then, he cares about me, and he's going to come through. And the reality is that anything that I face day to day, like my day-to-day life, God's sort of indifferent towards, or he's, as long as it's compartmentalized in the ministry camp, God cares about. But stuff that I'm concerned with, like my health and my welfare and the health of my kids, God's sort of indifferent towards. And that sort of, I realized that sort of creeped in to my life. And I think the agreement I had to break was God's not indifferent. God is not indifferent towards our own fears, and like Monty said, he absolutely is trustworthy. So that's been kind of something that's pretty big that's come out of that we are in, and two, I think, man, he's offering us freedom even in this. He's offering us freedom and faithfulness and relationship even in these moments, because it's easy to detach and sort of manage the chaos, like break away from intimacy with God to manage the chaos. You know what I'm saying? Like, but God is even offering us freedom, and he's offering us comfort, and he's offering us he's offering us sonship even in the midst of this. So I think that's been something that I've kind of been trying to walk in and listen to.
So the assumption here, and I guess I didn't say this, but the assumption is that we hear from God. And so y'all speak to that just a little bit about hearing from God. Have you always believed that way? Has that always been your experience, or is that something that's come more recently? And how does that develop?
I always thought that viewed God as somebody that loved me from a distance. He was maybe angry with me a little bit when I sinned, but then when I was walking the walk, riding the horse, getting back up on the horse, that he loved me maybe a little bit more. Always forgiven, never doubted my salvation or anything like that. But the blood of Jesus does so much more than just give us eternal life and forgiveness. There's so much more to it, and so much more powerful than that. He offers us intimacy and oneness, and part of that is a conversational relationship with him. And my day usually starts, I live on the east coast of Florida, is I get up and go watch the sunrise over the ocean and sit and just listen with my journal. And there's days when he speaks, maybe one word, maybe it's a page, but that's how he does it with me. And then I'll go back and reflect on those words. And even included in that is my wife, Jenny, words about her and stuff that are just incredible. And I'll bring that home and read that to her. And it's just open. It's a relationship. That's what a relationship is. It's two-way conversation, I know he speaks through his word, but he also speaks through his spoken word too. Speaks through other men like you guys.
Yeah, I think those three words, God will speak, are just something that that I've been just clinging to, like it's I think what Monty just said, it's a relationship. It's an interactive relationship, and I heard Dallas Willard talk about John 17. There's one place where Jesus says he's praying for unity. He says, Father, I pray that, we would be one just as they would be one just as you and I are one. And he says that he also prays, I think, for eternal life or something. But Dallas says that the way that's interpreted is actually supposed to be interpreted as interactive relationship, a giving, receiving, a walking with, on a daily basis, and I think that's kind of like something a lot of folks kind of lose grip of, that God will speak. Like when we're in crisis, or we're crying out to him, or we're, or whether we're just sitting looking at a sunrise and we're just trying to, have a casual conversation. The promise is that God will speak to that an interactive relationship with him, a giving, receiving on a daily basis, is possible. It absolutely is possible.
That's not what I grew up understanding. The conversation with God was over. And I was an adult before that really began to develop. And finally, I just basically thought, look, Scripture points to this. And actually, John Eldredge said something that kind of put the nail in the coffin. He said, if God doesn't still speak, then the Bible's a book of exceptions, not a book of examples. And what kind of father would do that? I mean, just what kind of
father?
Yeah, I mean, not a father that, not a father that I'm interested in associating with. And so over the course of time, I've realized that inner dialogue, if the fruit of it is consistent with His Word, that's actually God, and you'll get insight on stuff maybe you didn't want insight on. There's a couple of good books. Dallas Willard has a great book on that I think it's called Hearing from God, or I think that's what it's. And then, of course, John Eldredge has a good book too called Walking with God. A lot of good resources on the Ransomed Heart Tribe as well. So you can have ransomedheart.com. Guys, I want to make this one a little shorter than our last video, and so I want to give you guys a chance to wrap up. If there's anything additional you want to add, we've had a lot of folks, a lot of questions. One of them asked for some questions from some Facebook friends, and one of them said, "Is this the end?" I'm like, well, we don't really know. I don't think so.
Today's not.
Yeah, but
cue the REM song.
It's the end. Yeah. So anyway, just a parting thought, or also, let's do that, and then I want to hear any resources that 1, 2, 3 resources somebody could pick up, whether it's online or a book that they could get on Kindle or something. Or a podcast that they might want to listen to that's been helpful to you. So just to wrap up, and then any resources that come to mind.
I just, through all of this, and even before this crisis happened, identity is so crucial, and having an intimate relationship with God as Father, knowing how He views us individually. And there's a lot of talk, at the event, at the boot camps, about the new name. It's also obviously in the Bible. So to me, identity is crucial. And then the daily prayer that is on the Ransom Heart podcast. I mean, the website, the app, whatever it is. That's huge. It's got probably everything in it, authority and just check that out. It's been big for me.
Yeah, I would say too, anything on the Ransom Heart website or the podcast is always solid stuff. One of the things too, there's one podcast too that actually Monty, you introduced me to, was Restoring the Soul by Michael John Cusick. Michael John is a counselor, I think, in Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. But he does a really good podcast, and it's dealing with stuff like this, and walking with God, with each other as men, and dealing with issues, and I would say, as far as a parting thought, also a book. In Chris, you actually mentioned it. I don't know if you know that this was where what you said was in this book is in the book, but John Eldredge, Walking with God, man, that's huge right now. Like that would, I mean, I've almost wanted to pick it. I've read it 3 times, and I've almost wanted to pick it up and read it again during all this. What we talk about, hearing from God is possible. The thing where Chris, you said about the book of, the Bible's not a book of exceptions, and so those are 2 things. And I would say, just as a parting thought, wash your hands first of all. Wash your hands. Look, you got some time off, whether you like it or not. Okay, a lot of you do. Your kids are out of school, whether you like it or not. This may be the first thing you really invite God in on and ask Him to speak on. God, how do I spend this time? How do I spend this time with my kids, with my wife, or with my husband, or whatever? Ask God. I mean, look, maybe God did orchestrate this just to give us all a freaking break, you know? So, you know, I don't want to believe that, but, you know, I mean, like we get this rare opportunity to really invest in our families and really spend some solid time with each other. So I'd say take advantage of it, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, guys. I love that. Appreciate that. I always recommend anything by Brennan Manning. Also, Healing the Masculine Soul by Gordon Dalby. And, I've not read a book that's come out of Ransomed Heart or John Eldredge that wasn't valuable. But I'll tell you, save yourself some money and sign up for the Ransomed Heart Tribe, RH Tribe. And, you get a lot of good stuff for $9 a month. Or go on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and look up Ransomed Heart. They also have one for younger guys called And Sons. And then they have one kind of for folks in the middle, Become Good Soil by Morgan. Just all valuable stuff. I'm Chris Roe, the Executive Director at Encounter. It looks like Jesse's painting again. Doing a good job there, Jess.
Yes.
You can find us at encounterministriesonline.org. You can find me on Facebook. You can find our ministry on Facebook at facebook.com/encounter04. And you can email me at Chris Roe, ROE32 @gmail.com is the easiest way to get a hold of me. Monty, Jesse, Jesse, you've already given yours out. Monty, if you have any desire to give your email out, tell a little bit about the Live Free stuff, that'd be a good time.
It's livefreeevents.org, and we put on basics. We've done 3 so far, and we've also done a captivated event for women.
And they're awesome, by the way.
Yeah. And Jesse's going to perform at the next one probably. Well, he already did it this past one. And he's a pretty good mountain biker too, by the way, Chris.
So, good. I'd like to see that.
He goes for it. My email is Monty, MONTY, McCart, MCCART @gmail.com.
Great, guys. I love y'all. Appreciate y'all being on here today. We'll try to get this published this afternoon. And if y'all would share it on your Facebook page, and if those of you watching, share it on your Facebook page. This is not to promote anybody's ministry so much as it is to get the message of hope in the middle of crisis out. So share that, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks. Love you guys.
See you guys.
Bye.
Yeah.